Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, we already have our first hype headline of training camp. Ryan Dunn, his shot got a lot better just since Summer League. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Suns. I am Brendon Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this Wednesday. Don't forget, Locked On Suns is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So click that follow or subscribe button and do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everyday or get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Today's show, guys, brought to you by the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app. Create an account and use the code LOCKEDONNBA when you do to get $20 off your first purchase. Joining me, as always, the executive producer of The Drive on Fox Sports 910 from the wonderful West Valley. How are we feeling on this Wednesday, Ben Garcia?
So good. You got me jacked up earlier. You sent me a story from Dwayne Rankin about Ryan Dunn, and I'm telling you that if he works out, we're going to be championship contenders. Honestly, I'm getting my ring sized clearly for the championship parade when it happens, but I'm also
we're getting rings, that's for sure.
I'm trying to figure out what 3-point celebration Ryan Dunn's going to do. We doing like the Quentin Richardson? We doing the Kemba Walker? I don't know what we're doing.
Melo. Yeah. The Mikal Bridges. There's a lot. Okay, so Ryan Dunn spoke at training camp day one. I think it was him and Tyus Jones today. And he was asked about his shot, which, look, he's going to get asked about that every time he sits in front of the media for the next 8 months. He better get used to it. And I think all good. But, like, here's the thing. So he said it got a lot better. He said it's about reps, and it's not like he's reconstructing things, and he's not, working with some kind of shot doctor or anything here, Ben. And I do believe that, because the thing with him is, like, you even watch at Virginia, you wouldn't watch him and think, this is not Michael Kidd-Gilchrist or some of the guys, right, that are like historically like just the ugliest, like that's never going to work types of jumpers, which is one of the things that's given me at least a little bit of optimism about the fact that he could develop it up. I kind of believe him that it's just about reps and confidence and adjusting to that NBA line. Like I kind of think this is real, even if, it's still going to be a work in progress.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that you had mentioned. You had said, this is the only thing that matters, that, and like it is. Nothing, we just expect he's going to be amazing defensively because that's why they drafted him. Don't really care about his passing ability, just don't be awful. And then he's an athlete, there's no questions about that. It's always going to be the shot-making ability from three-point land more specifically. And so for Ryan Dunn, when he says it's gotten a lot better, the problem is, before he might have been like a 20% three-point shooter, and now he's a 30%, which still isn't good enough. Like, his shot has a long way to go. Now, I've spoken with a decent amount of people that covered Virginia basketball last year, having them on the show. I worked on Fox Sports 910. I was hosting during the draft, so I was able to have some people on, and everyone had said the same thing you did. So it's not just you. Obviously, you don't do this, but it's not just you looking at a YouTube video and being like, oh, I'm diagnosing this shot. Everyone that I've spoken to thinks the same exact thing when it comes to Ryan Dunn. No one, in fact, it's almost been like a mystery. Like, why can't this guy hit a shot on a consistent basis? Yeah. His jumper does not look broken. It's not Lonzo Ball from UCLA. So, I mean, it's
good NBA shooter, though, low-key.
Well, he definitely corrected that shot coming into the NBA. It's not the same. He was like this. I mean, that was an awful, but he obviously figured that out. But Ryan Dunn, if he figures out the 3-point thing, I mean, should I say my grand declaration now? If he figures out the 3-point shot, the Suns are winning the title. If he is and I guess I have to specify what I said to you, because I guess it can get confusing. I had texted you. I was like, if he can have a Derek Lively-like impact on this team this year, they're winning the championship. In my opinion, they would be my pick to win the championship. Now, things are weird, whatever. What I mean by Derek Lively like player. I just mean the impact. The impact that Derek Lively had clearly as a center. He's a much bigger player. He plays a much different style game of Ryan Dunn. I'm just saying if they have a Derek Lively-esque impact to what Ryan Dunn does well, defense, hopefully shooting the ball correctly, being an athlete, that was the Suns' biggest issue last year. That's what it was. It wasn't I don't think it was the point guard position. I don't think it was the bigs. This team had a clear deficiency at the wings where every other good team, Jaylen Brown, JD McDaniels, PJ Washington, Aaron Gordon, like everyone has one. Every elite team has one. And the Suns didn't have depth at that position outside of KD. So I didn't see this. You said it to me and I got insane. What was your reaction to this? Was it much more tame and realistic than mine?
I guess it's the thing you said first. What does a lot better mean?
Exactly.
And what's the ceiling in general, right? Like, what's a realistic expectation for him? I mean, as a rookie, yes, but even at all, ever. What is, and you start to get into the secondary questions. Okay. Because I did go back and watch some of his Virginia shots again today, and I put into slow motion a clip that Dwayne Rankin had put up. And I was there at Summer League, so I got to see him shooting around and playing in the game. I was there for the first game, that's it. I think that one thing I feel like I can say about the shot is that he has a really wide base, and I think he's trying to use that even more. I think just getting his feet consistently set and getting the footwork and lower body part of the shot right seems to be something that he's put work into since Virginia. But I don't see a lot of things that again, need to really be tweaked. But, is it that he's going to be passable on wide open shots and that's it?
Exactly.
Is it that he's going to be able to make contested ones? Is it corners only, or can he go out to the wings and above the break? Those are the things that I think you're going to have to try to see from him. And then, from there, how does he round out the rest of the offensive game? And none of that is going to happen this year. I think this year, the thing you want is, can he make them? Can he just make them, even on a low volume? Not willing to go so far as to say that it is that big of a game changer, Ben, but
oh man,
it helps. It helps. He goes from being a question mark to a rotation player. And like
playoff
you
rotation.
said, a rotation player for a team at a position that is the biggest possible need, and then does that change what they look for in the trade market? It really does change everything. I don't know if it means they're a championship team, but it definitely changes the face of this group in a bunch of ways if he can be on the floor consistently and be an offensive threat.
Maybe I get a little ahead of myself because I think a lot of people don't realize how impactful Derek Lively was for the Mavericks. So ask him to be that is a really high level to be at.
I think people recognize how good Lively was. I just think that there's a reason he's the first name that comes to your mind is because it's so rare.
Yeah. Well, it is. It is. I don't know if I can name another.
You don't have 5 examples, right?
I don't know if I have 2.
That's how big it is.
I don't know if I have 2.
Yeah.
But it's not impossible. I don't think it's and you had mentioned this with Ryan Dunn. People generally will respond to this and just say we'll just have Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Yusuf Nurkic, and Ryan Dunn out there. Just start those 5 or end a game with those 5. We'll just have Ryan Dunn out there for defense. That is such a strange thing to say to me because this is not the NFL. Teams will leave you open and double Kevin Durant and dare Ryan Dunn to make a shot. If that was something that you could actually do, Josh Okogie would have been perfectly fine. But teams were leaving him open. If Ryan Dunn can develop shots to where he cannot be left wide open and a corner 3-point shot, I think that's very important so that he's not clogging up the lane and forcing teams to play out on him, similar to what PJ Washington and Derrick Jones Jr. did in that conference finals. That's all I need from him. I don't need him pulling up from 3, pulling up from the top of the key. That is, I think, very unrealistic. Can he set his feet and make teams pay? And as soon as he has no time to learn this. And we'll know right away in the season if he actually has gotten a lot better. Because why in the world would Coach Budenholzer, with a lack of depth on the small forward position or any of the wing positions, sit this guy for long stretches if he can defend dudes and shoot threes? Now, we're going to know very quickly just how much it's come to fruition. And at the end of the day, we'll know if he's going to be a playoff rotational piece or someone that actually matters within a month. Because they're not going to let that guy rot on the bench forever, especially if he's tearing it up at practice.
Yeah, I agree. How much that jumper has improved, we will learn more so. I mean, we'll see it in games in the preseason, but more so than anything, we'll learn it from what his role ends up being, because that coaching staff's going to know the real truth of that comment more than anybody else, and they'll tell us the answer by how many minutes they give.
Do you buy it, just really quickly? Do you buy it? Do you buy it has gotten better? A lot better. Not better, a lot better. Do you believe
I don't buy that I don't buy that it's gotten a lot better. I think that I buy that it will get better just because, again, it was never broken. So to me, it's like if you're a professional athlete and you're doing the same thing over and over and you're learning where and how your shots are going to come at the next level, I would hope that just the reps do help. Like Virginia plays a weird style of offense. This guy was the best player on the team, but not the best offensive player on the team. It's just in this environment, I think it's a lot easier to say, okay, my form's not broken, so I just need to get better at making the shots from the distance and the locations and in the rhythm that I'm going to get them. And that probably does go a long way. I mean, how long? We'll see, but I do buy it. To that degree. Not a lot, but I do believe that it got better. Okay, let's jump into the hierarchy. Leadership. Have we learned anything? We'll dive back into Media Day a little bit to see where things stand in the pecking order for this team. Coming up next. First, today's show is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. NFL fans, start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get that hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Told you already, the Arizona Cardinals, 7.5-point dogs. Maybe just put the 5 on them, see if something good can happen. Either way, the reward is that $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, win or lose, all at FanDuel.com. All right, Ben, let's keep the show rolling. You brought this up as we were talking. What's still on our minds coming off of that media day? And I think that the buy-in was obvious, and we talked about kind of the happiness this group seems to be getting. I think the kind of like raw transparency about everything we definitely commented on. But one question we came back to a bunch during our season preview series, which we will do another part of here to round out today's show, was who is the leader? Does that have to be the best player? Can it be the coach? Do you feel like we're any closer to understanding the big picture pecking order of the roster, the coaching staff, and how that's all going to gel this season?
Before I answer that, I can't remember. Were you at Media Day last year?
Yeah.
I wasn't there. Is the buy-in different? Does it feel different this year? I mean, is it just a different... I mean, from last year to this year, does it seem like, I don't know, they just respect Budenholzer more? Like, I wasn't at Media Day last year.
Yeah,
Was there
I
a
guess
difference?
I didn't have a ton of thoughts on that specifically. It's kind of like one of those things that becomes clear in hindsight. It's like, well, now we know they didn't like Vogel as much because, one, they're telling us, like, it's pretty obvious. But two, it's like, oh, well, clearly the commitment and the over-the-top ecstaticness that they have with Bud, well, okay, that wasn't there with Frank. But I don't think in the moment I was sitting there like, I don't think they like this guy. You know what I mean? So, but what I would say is, again, maybe it's a little bit of hindsight, but Vogel wasn't anybody's first choice. That coaching search lasted a long time. It was a weird fit with the roster from the start. So I think any reasonable person would look at it and say, this should be a better fit, right? So I think that's why I'm more willing to buy it.
Well, okay, that's interesting. That even just kind of now you can look back and say, oh, yeah, in hindsight, that didn't really make sense. Yeah, for me, I really love press conferences for players and coaches that matter. Wasn't really that interested in what Ty Washington had to say. Sorry, Bobo fans, wasn't too interested in what Bobo had to say. Devin Booker, it's so clear he's the leader of this team.
He brought up leadership twice. By himself.
And we mentioned it yesterday. Just how you present yourself matters. And there is, I feel like if I put Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant up there to someone who didn't know sports, I feel like they would rank Kevin Durant third because he looked really disinterested, but we know how he feels against the media. And to be fair, Kevin Durant has always said he's not really interested in leading. So it's kind of a me problem if I say he needs to lead. Bradley Beal was very joyous, but I wouldn't say there was a leadership component to him. Devin Booker walked up there like he knew this franchise was his. And I mean that in a very, very nice way. And it kind of changed my perspective a little bit because I've only been to very few Suns press conferences before. I just wasn't covering the team at that point. But he does have, I know the kids love to say this word, aura to him that just kind of commands a room. Everyone seems like, and also it was kind of like no one seemed to fear to ask him questions. And so I'm kind of changing my way of thinking in this is I still think if the Suns are going to win a championship, Kevin Durant has to be the best player. Just historically, from what I've seen, if outside of Steph Curry, big guys run this league, and Kevin Durant at times is impossible to guard, and Devin Booker at times is not impossible to guard. We've seen people take him out. But Devin Booker, if he can really grab a stranglehold on that leadership position and everyone have these clear defined roles, Bradley Beal being so willing to be the Derek White role player, not Derek White, but that kind of guy to take on that role. And Kevin Durant just understand he's just here to hoop and get buckets, and Booker be the leader and Grayson Allen lead the sixth man. Like that is, maybe I'm wrong and tell me if I am, but that is something we didn't have last year. It took like 7 months, 6 months or whatever for Frank Vogel finally to say, yeah, Bradley Beal's the point guard. We all thought it, but no, he never said it. And so I think having these clear defined roles are so important. Am I overblowing it?
No. First, I know it's semantics. It doesn't really matter. I never bought into the idea that Bradley Beal was a point guard of this team last year. And that speaks to the point that I want to make, which is Devin Booker was the point guard of this team last year. He led the team in touches. He led the team in all the things of how much a person is in charge of the offense. It was all Booker. And I think he'll out-touch and out-usage and out all of it Beal and probably Durant again this year. What I think got in the way of Booker being that leader last year and being the answer to your question, our question, without hesitation, is that having to do so much of that, having to have the ball in his hands, and you could just see the wheels turning way too much last year with this guy. For a player who's so smooth, so effortless, so 2 steps ahead of the defense at all times, that was not the case last year, which is why it was so odd and kind of funny and coincidental that he ends up making All-NBA, and statistically it's like one of his best seasons, because I think if you watched, it didn't feel that way. They put so much on his mental plate that I think he couldn't do that. I think Booker has talked the talk of being a leader of this team since 22-23. So this will be the 3rd season where I think you've really sensed him embrace that. I just think for one reason or another, it's not always been possible. Maybe that's me giving him too much slack to say, oh, other stuff got in the way. If you're the leader, you're the leader, right? But I will just say it's set up this year where it should be him. He doesn't have to worry about doing stuff he can't do. There's depth. There's other vets. There's a better coach in place. Be that voice in the locker room and own that. And at this point, I think it has to happen because this thing fell apart last year.
Do you think Devin Booker, and I mean this in the most secure way, clearly Devin Booker doesn't care if Kevin Durant is better than him at basketball. This guy has only ever wanted to win. And I think it's pretty unequivocally true. Maybe not at this point. I'm not sure. But career-wise, Kevin Durant just clears Devin Booker.
Yeah.
Do you think last year, Devin Booker maybe felt like he had to take a back seat to Kevin Durant because he's always been little brother to Kevin Durant? He always has been. That's how big bro, little bro type of thing. It's kind of hard. Like, I have an older brother. It's kind of hard for me to just take the leadership role over him because the dynamic there, it's just kind of strange. And with the kind of brother-like friendship that those two have, they vacation together, they're recruiting, whatever it is. Do you think last year, with Kevin Durant's clear superiority at basketball, Devin Booker kind of felt a little threatened, but threatened in a way of like, should I lead because maybe it should be Kevin? Did he felt like it was his place to do it? Do you think that's something he might have struggled with? It makes you think, right?
Yeah, it does. But I guess I don't worry about their relationship and I don't worry about the mutual respect. So I think it really was more of a basketball thing than a mentality thing. If I try to diagnose what the issue was, I just think that Book was put into a role that he did really well in, but wasn't optimal. And so I think that's what got in the way more than anything. I think the fit of all of it just was so much of an issue that he couldn't make up for it, would be the way that I would put it. But I don't know if I don't know if it was like a hesitation to be the leader, because again, like, I've heard a lot of the same stuff that we heard on Media Day in terms of him talking about being the leader for the past 2.5 seasons that KD's already been here. So I don't know if he's holding back to defer to KD in that way, but regardless, I think it'll be better this season. I mean, I don't know. It sounds like you think that there might have been a little bit of that.
I mean, it does kind of feel like that, right? Because, again, this is all speculatory, and it's kind of interesting to me how kind of life and sports kind of intertwine. And listen, I might never admit it, but my little brother for just recently got better than me at basketball, or at least he's right up to on par with me, and it frustrates me. And so for me, I still find it hard to take a backseat to him when we're playing. But I got to learn to feed him the ball and get rid of my ego. Like, do you think Kevin Durant, although he knows he's better, and he's kind of been the mentor to Devin Booker, at least very close with him, do you think Kevin Durant's willing to take a backseat to Devin Booker's leadership? Or, and this worries me. Okay, but this does worry me though. Kevin Durant at times can be a little bit of aloof and just wants to do his own thing, which works when you're on the Warriors. But when you're asked to kind of be the focal point at times in this offense, I don't know. And the shield of the Warriors was already there. This is different. Everyone's new. I do worry a little bit about that. You do not.
Well, you said, right, yourself, it's kind of a you problem at this point if you think of Durant as wanting to be the leader. So if he has that mentality, then he can't also have an issue with somebody else seizing that role, right? So no. And look, you and I kind of disagree on which is the better player anyway right now. I think that KD is the greater player, right? Like he has the stature. But it's the same thing we've, it's kind of been talking about with like LeBron and AD in LA for a while. Like that's right there for Anthony Davis to take. He just maybe hasn't always consistently done that. But I don't think it's because LeBron is breathing down his neck or looking over his shoulder. I just think Anthony Davis is not consistent on the offensive end. If Book is consistent and dominant and all those things and meets the moment as a leader, I think it's all right there for him. Okay, let's talk about the identity of this team. We're kind of already doing it in a macro way, but let's get more onto the court, talk about what will make this team great if it is great next. First, today's show is brought to you by our lovely friends at Gametime, which has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. At Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. My trip to the East Coast is coming up shortly, and I was able to find some Sunday night football tickets to watch the wonderful Joe Burrow take on the New York Giants. And the way that I found my tickets was to basically keep checking Gametime and looking at those Gametime picks until that price came to where I actually could fork over the money to do it. And that's a common experience. Look, we all want to go out and do as much as we can, but we can't spend all the money in the world. And Gametime sorts that all out and says, here's the best deal we have. And most of the time, it's the best deal out there. In addition to those seat views within the app, the all-in pricing that you can toggle on to see exactly what you're paying, and much more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
Gametime.
All right, let's close it out, Ben. So, identity. We've been circling around this one for a while. We wanted to talk about what the identity of this team is going to be. And I want to try to put it as succinctly as possible, but I have to admit, I'm not fully positive yet. I'm almost like too in media day world, and I'm too in like training camp quotable world. It's hard for me to envision even what I would have thought 2 weeks ago because I just am so bowled over with all the comments that are coming our way. But what are your thoughts? Like, what's the first thing? Where can we start building what this identity might be, even if we don't fully see it yet?
I'm baffled because I thought you were going to get upset with me because I was going to say, Brendon, I'm not sure yet. I have an idea of what it should be, and I'll get to that in just a second. But here's what it cannot be. Here's what the Suns' identity absolutely cannot be. Way too often, people will be like, Big Three, that's the Suns' identity. Your identity can never just be, we have a lot of talent. That will never work in any space, not in football, not in baseball, not in college football, not in basketball, not in college basketball. It does not work anywhere. And that kind of brings me back to, well, what do you do? What does your Big Three do exceptionally well? And again, your identity cannot be scoring. No, that's not how that works. Your identity has to be when your back is against the wall and you need a bucket, or for some teams, you need a stop. What are you going to, and the other team cannot stop it? I got to be honest. I know we want them to shoot a lot more threes, and I believe they're going to. This team's bread and butter is always going to be the mid-range assassins. They cannot just give that up. Bradley Beal had a great quote at Media Day, basically saying when he was talking about Bud, getting after him because he wasn't shooting enough threes. He had said directly after, we don't really have a choice. We have to shoot more threes. But we're still not going to give up what we do exceptionally well. Of course, I'm paraphrasing. Yeah, then he had said 60% from Book and KD shoot 60% at times from mid-range. That still does have to be the Suns' identity until proven otherwise, because I don't know if they're going to be a great three-point shooting team. I know that even if three-point shooting doesn't work out or defense or whatever, I know this team will always be great in the mid-range. I know when this team needs a bucket, they're not going to shoot the three. Kevin Durant's going to pull up from the mid-range, and for some reason, people are still going to foul him on it, and he's going to make the shot and go to the free throw line and make the next one. And then for Beal and Booker, I believe it's the same.
So, to me, I think like what I'm hearing is they're going to be able to kind of out-execute their opponents late in games, right? Like that's when that really comes into effect. That's when it really matters to be able to create and make a lot of mid-range shots, right? I guess to add on to that, my thing would be if I had to try to kind of sum it up from what we've seen and what the roster looks like and everything else and Bud's philosophies, I just think that part of why I'm hesitant is it's the same thing I would have said last year to agree. They're going to have to be one of the best offensive teams in the NBA. They're going to win games on the offensive end by being overpowering and dominant. I think that does have to include catching up to the rest of the NBA in terms of playing a modern style. Taking more threes is part of that. Playing faster is part of that. Getting more offensive rebounds is part of that. Cutting down turnovers, that's not modern or old. That's just an obvious no-brainer thing you have to do. But maybe what's different this year, Ben, is I would say that potentially they could be a really smart and connected offensive team it's I won't say they're going to put all the looseness with the ball and the mistakes fully behind them. I can't go there till we see it. But I mean, there are just a lot of high IQ guys on this team all of a sudden. There really are, like we talked about Ryan Dunn. Okay, that's going to be hit or miss. But around the big three now, you have Nurkic already was that, but you have Tyus Jones, Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal, Monte Morris, Mason Plumlee. That's a lot of veteran, smart guys who move the ball, are selfless. I could just really see this being, yes, overpowering with the scoring talent, but also just a really selfless, connected, smart offensive team. And I think that's maybe that's what I'm just hoping, kind of willing into existence. But that to me feels like an identity rather than, like you said, it can't just be the talent. How do you build around that talent? And that's what I think we could see.
That was a really eye-opening answer. That, I mean, you had just said something that immediately sparked my brain. The Yusuf Nurkic thing, he's irritating. He's a very smart basketball player. You know who wasn't very smart? DeAndre Ayton, because I just don't think he wanted to be. And then you had mentioned a couple other guys. Grayson Allen has really, I believe, changed his reputation around the league from being what was kind of a dirty player to now he's just a gritty, smart basketball player who shoots the ball effectively well. And then Tyus Jones. You can argue this lineup. I mean, Royce O'Neal's the same way. They've got a little bit of age to them, but they're not old. Like, Kevin Durant's old. But outside of that, Monte Morris is not old. Believe it or not, he's actually older than Tyus Jones. Devin Booker's not old. Bradley Beal's not. He's 30. He's not old. Yusuf Nurkic is not old. There is some real experience on this team, and I think that's going to go a long way too. But absolutely, your identity can just be, we will outsmart you. That's what LeBron James has been doing for 20 years.
They might have one. I mean, just kind of zooming out and looking at the league, like they have one of the best playmaking rosters, I think you would say now, which is kind of crazy. But they basically had good playmaking at every position besides point guard last year, and now they just added 2 point guards and a backup center who can do it. It's hard to they don't have that number one guy. Like you mentioned, LeBron, Jokic, players like that, they're not going to be able to compete with. But just kind of top to bottom in terms of depth, Royce O'Neal's a good passer for his position. He keeps the ball moving. Grayson Allen does the same thing. Both centers now do that. I think the big three are all positive playmakers for stars. There's a lot more black hole superstars out there than Booker, Beal, and Durant. So, yeah, I would think that their offensive style will be a lot more similar to what we saw during the Monty Chris era, to be honest with you. I think that's probably what they're shooting for is much more selflessness.
I expected, and the Monty Chris is a great description of it, but I expected more artistry from this offense last year, and they didn't have that. I expect to see it this year because Tyus Jones and Monte Morris are going to be able to do that. So I just expect it, and this is such a commonly used word, but it's true. It just needs to be more fluid and not so stagnant, because that was the most frustrating thing last year when the ball would just stick in players' hands and not move. And it was just mano-a-mano basketball. And that is the worst YMCA, Steve Nash head coaching your team type of basketball. Like it genuinely is awful. So yeah, the IQ is off the chart with this team.
That'll wrap us up. Hit follow or subscribe if you have not already. Become an everydayer. We got content for you daily. I don't know if you we call you an everydayer because you get shows every day. That's kind of how that goes. So hit that button. We'll be back tomorrow. Enjoy your Wednesday.